right, test one. Okay, here we go. Thanks for joining Bread Basket of Life. This is Matt, and today's little session is going to be exploring the relationship of science with Christianity. So, science and Christianity are entwined with each other because we as humans make it. So, the concept that should be explored and determined is science has a belief that it is explaining and is fact. But if I put my arm outside and it's raining and I declare it's raining as the weather, am I really declaring something that's fact or making an observation after the fact of it raining? Because I could bring my arm in and say it was wet, therefore I know it's raining. Someone who did not see me do that would just say, maybe you took a shower and that's where the water came from, or you washed your hands. What is the difference between water on an arm that's rain versus a sink or a shower? You have to demonstrate a level of faith in what someone is presenting. So we structure in our current age of relativism. We construct our truth based on the observations we make in life, based on our life experiences, and go from there. So, is there truth, and what does science reveal? So, faith is simply the belief and acceptance of something that you have not actually maybe seen or partaken of, but you have a firm belief in. Where science, one of my favorite ones, are dinosaur bones. We found a dinosaur bone in the ground. As a child, they were lizards. They had scales. They were cold-blooded. Now they're feathered birds. And dinosaurs that once existed no longer exist. Yet I have yet to meet someone who has actually observed a dinosaur in its natural habitat. Therefore, we are constructing our understanding of something based on the bones we found on the ground, and we project we know what it can eat or not eat based on what we see. I remember at one point the T-Rex went from an apex predator to at one point there was an argument over the T-Rex being a scavenger because of the lack of its development of arms. So it goes from an apex predator to potentially a scavenger. But who can win the argument when we don't have any observational facts? Observational facts brings up the question of the unseen. You can sit in your house, look out a window, and know that wind is blowing because you are seeing the effect of wind, but we actually don't see wind. In order to see wind, we could construct a wind tunnel and put smoke in there. And from that smoke going over a model, we can see the aerodynamic flow of the wind over the shape of an object, making something unseen to be seen. Why do we bring up this aspect? Creation. It's a fundamental argument between a branch of science and Christianity. If science is the explanation of things, then you could almost imagine Christianity and reason being DNA. The two strands of DNA being connected together by the pursuit of knowledge and information. That information we reveal over time by scientific method, as we call it. A scientific method that we will admit on the foundation that we could be wrong as we gather more facts. So scientific method will only show us what we can see and understand today. The view of creation can be debated. You could get a group of 30 Christians together and probably get 30 different perspectives on what creation is or how it occurred. And some of them may even argue over why do we care? It lays our foundation. So there is the old earth element, there is the young earth element, both believing that from nothing we got something. Big Bang Theory, research upon research and different hypotheses, negative energy, dark energy, but there was nothing that became something. The difference between old earth and young earth is how old is the earth. Young earth prescribed to the belief that the Bible is based on 24-hour days. God created darkness and light. Was that 24 hours? Was that a moment? And the day was over because that act of creation. Hebrew scholars will debate this. What word was used for creation of light and dark versus the word that was creation of animals and life on earth? Different word choices implying different meanings. So scripture does not make it clear, was it a 24-hour day? So that comes down to your system of belief, because shockingly, I have yet to encounter anyone that actually was there at the creation. And no one took pictures and, documented it with a recording and put it on TikTok. So not there yet. Old earthers take it that it wasn't a 24-hour day, but an epoch of time. Old earthers, the argument that will be established is, was there death before original sin or not? One thing to look up if you're a Christian is look up the Genesis curse. And it leads to the idea that nothing died until Adam sinned. But it's actually sin and death comes to man. Not all. And so there's disputes. Is it man that experiences death for the first time and death did occur? And that's why we have the fossil layers and the evidence that's in the layers of the ground. Again, wasn't there when that happened. But we could always argue that if there is a God or a designer, then if he designed humans to be the way we are, we have a sense of humor. Maybe he has a sense of humor, and he's having fun watching us look at these bones in the ground, trying to figure out what they mean because no one's ever seen them. But if you accept that, then you accept that there is a designer, which is a third philosophy, that there is some type of intelligence that is manifested that created nothing from something. One interesting aspect is if you look at global and ancient civilizations, look at what we have in similarity, not in differences. Egyptian culture, something from nothing. That an entity comes and creates light and dark. Native American cultures are ripe with this. They have different little tales that come in different aspects. But again, the similarity of there was nothing and then there was something. Vikings believe we existed in the void of two somethings. But again, where are we? According to the Vikings, we were nothing. It was a void, a space between two somethings. Chinese culture believes it was an egg of yin and yang. But again, there was nothing, but the something was in a vessel. So again, Big Bang Theory, science, astrology, astrologists, astrophysics, all this stuff keeps coming back to we project that there was nothing. And because there was nothing, it became something. The argument is how. Naturalists have a perspective that there were already laws in place in this universe that enabled nothing to become something. But if there were natural laws that enable nothing to become something, then where did the laws come from? But that's a question that they will not ask or can answer, because then it implies who created the something that was there before nothing. Now, the other perspective that's argued with some questions is evolution. Evolution is an examination of how we became one cell to multi-cell organisms of such variety. One interesting thing with evolution, it's changed from the times of Darwin to being able to explain certain things. A interesting little science experiment that was done up in University of Michigan with E. coli. They ran several different batches of E. coli to where they've been able to get thousands of generations because it's a short-lived bacteria. They have yet to have the same mutations, evolutions, changes of that bacteria over time in the same set of circumstances. So evolution believes that we can, one, randomly select and choose the mutation that's best for survival, or because a mutation is best for survival for the changing of environments, that enables you to move forward and everything else dies off. Or third, it's utterly random and whatever happens, happens. So again, we have multiple different explanations for something that we cannot literally say, here's the missing link that we've been looking for 80 plus years. Keep finding new dinosaur bones to redefine dinosaurs. But we haven't come to the point where we can say this is the missing link between primates and humans. Some of the interesting ideas out there, just to throw out, are the idea that a whale evolved from a four-legged land creature. Because we look at a whale and it's like an ink blot. You look at bones and you see structures. If you're looking for a particular structure, you might find it. So what's the structure they think they find? 4 nubs that could have been legs. Why do we think we're related to primates? Because of our tailbone. Our back spine ends in a little point that looks like it could be a tail. Dogs have tails. Cats have tails. There's a lot of animals with tails. Why primates? Primates technically don't have 5 fingers. So we drop the tail, we gain fingers, we gain other aspects through random mutation or design. As Christians, God created man separately. Something for consideration as you go through what your personal beliefs are is gap theory or gap explanation. Science can't explain something. Christians can't reason something. God did it. Well, if we take creation out of the picture, that we have this random set of circumstances that someone created in a moment, defying all things that make sense, including natural law, because somehow the natural law had to start the process. As Christians, we believe there is another miraculous event, Jesus' birth. Not just that, then Jesus' resurrection. So there are certain things that we as Christians can accept that God did it. Well, if there is natural law, where did the laws come from? God did it. So some people will accuse Christians of going easy or lazy by saying God did it. But at the same point, if God is our explanation, what is the counter explanation? Did Jesus live? Historical documentation and different recourses come to an agreement. Jesus Christ did live and existed on earth. Now, If he was divine, that's where disputes will come up, and that comes down to your beliefs. But again, I haven't met anyone that was alive during the time of Jesus. Therefore, I have to take everyone's word for it if they don't believe in him, as well as if they do believe in him. So again, faith has to bridge the gap. We weren't there. I could open the newspaper again and they tell me there's a new pope. I have to take their word for it because I wasn't there and I wasn't in the room. So, is science got a point? Why not? God said there was mysteries. Why not explore them? What was the purpose of man? To subdue the earth in Genesis. Subduing the earth, how do you do that if you don't understand where you're living? So, a designer. If by this time you still don't believe there's a designer and everything's by random circumstance, then explain this random circumstance. Why does everything want to live? We look at the unseen. I've mentioned it earlier. Look at the unseen. That's the designer. Unseen, behind the scene. But everything on earth wants to live. Grass will live. Yes, sir. Question.
I mean, if it didn't want to live, it would already be dead, though. So then you wouldn't just, the stuff that's left is what wanted to live, because otherwise it'd be dead.
So you're saying something that was dying wouldn't want to live?
Well, no, I'm saying that if it didn't want to live, it wouldn't be alive, and therefore you wouldn't see it. So your argument's kind of invalid there.
So if it's invalid, then why is there life and death then?
Well, no, I didn't say that it wouldn't die at all, but you said it's filled with only things that want to be alive. Well, yeah, duh, because all the things that wanted to be dead aren't here.
But what are those things that wanted to be dead?
I don't know, they're dead.
Okay, so again, you're now asking me to have the same faith on things that don't exist to believe that things don't exist because they wanted to be dead.
I didn't say anything existed other than what you pointed out.
Well, there's lots of people who don't always want to be alive and they're still alive.
Yet, even a person that commits suicide doesn't really want to commit suicide most of the time. They seek a desire to live.
Mm-hmm.
The body produces everything it needs without a human to force it to produce amino acids, stomach digestion, breathing, thought, sight. You have to force yourself not to do those things. A tree, short of a human or another act causing it, will die, will live unless forced to die being chopped down. I chopped down a tree earlier this year, and because the stump's still in the ground and I couldn't dig out the stump, it's got little offshoots coming up, trying to still live.
I mean, weeds really want to live, so.
And weeds will find anything.
They'll find a way.
So if animals seek to live, humans seek more time, and we put off the things that we value because we think we'll have more time. And there's this automatic production of oxygen on the planet. The planet knows how to clean itself and detoxify itself. The question is that not equal to science's missing link? Science's all things came from one cell at the beginning of life. That one cell is in the DNA, you could say, of life. That everything was created to live. But not just to live, but like the weed, to thrive. Everyone wishes to thrive. How you thrive is a totally different discussion. But that imprint is on all humanity. So science and Christianity. Science seeks to explain the unseen. Christianity has an explanation for the unseen. It comes down to, are you satisfied with not knowing? Because in reality, the other thing I've never met, even though people are accused of it, of being a know-it-all or walking encyclopedias, but I've actually not met anyone that has a doctorate in every science. 1 or 2 sciences, maybe 5 foreign languages, but no one has all the accumulated knowledge. We live in a day and age where we will say, Google. I was going to hold that up, but it's not ready. Google. We look at the Google, but is Google all-knowing? It does not take the same amount of faith that Google is telling you something that is true. The reliance on and emergence of AI and the emergence that AI is being found to create information. AI is supposed to help, but now it's creating information or creating false information in certain cases. So if AI is not 100% reliable, is humanity. Can science, and I happen to have a scientific mind that is slinking away from the question I'm about to ask then the audience. But why? The why. So the question is, can science explain why? Would you, sir, value yourself as someone that understands Newton's laws and principles?
Absolutely.
What is gravity?
That would be the force pulling down towards the center of a mass.
Why do we have it?
Basically, the way that it works is you have to look at space-time as like sheets of paper almost, and Earth is pushing away these sheets of paper and creating a like a Z or a lump in there. Okay, so you've got all this pressure pushing down between these planes, and that is what is pushing us back down because space-time wants to be flat.
So you've explained how it functions, but what is it?
Space-time. Space and time.
So you're saying gravity is space and time. So why is gravity space and time and space and time are not gravity?
Well, now space-time is what is creating the force of trying to go back flat and even. It's the same thing with like an airplane wing. What creates lift and drag and how airplanes actually fly.
So you're saying gravity isn't gravity. Gravity is space and time in operation.
Gravity is the effect of space and time on an object.
So space and time are in fact gravity, and gravity.
No, space and time are space and time. The gravity is an effect caused by the fact that space and time coexist.
But I can't touch space. I can't touch time, and I can't touch gravity.
Right
How?
Hello, look around you.
Gravity.
Last time I checked, this is air.
Okay, and air is made up of particles.
So now you're saying space and time are particles. So why do I need a watch to tell me time?
So
if it's particles.
So
So science in
right
this.
there, no, you just said, why do you need to watch to tell time? But you just told me that you're not in time. So why do you need to watch?
I didn't say I wasn't in time.
You just said that you didn't know where space or time was.
I don't in the context of your explanation of
You
gravity.
can't touch it.
Well.
So science will link concepts, but cannot explain why humans exist on Earth and why Earth, why here, why gravity to keep us on the Earth. Why couldn't it be something else?
What would you like? Magnetized boots or something?
Magnetized boots on ground? That'd be interesting.
Well,
But-
aren't magnets naturally existing?
Mm-hmm.
In the Earth?
Yeah, I mean, neodymium.
Well, then it comes down to if there was nothing and there was not space and there wasn't time because it was negative energy, which was not in the explanation of gravity, how does negative energy become space, time, molecules, particles, and everything else?
But how does God become God?
Because God, in our understanding, is spirit, which science cannot explain.
Okay, but where did spirit come from?
He was there before time. That's all I know.
Yes.
Give me that's even more
I know, it's
metaphysical
very
mumbo jumbo than my whole theory about
So-
gravity. Gravity I
Well,
can
that's
prove. I
Mumbo
can show,
jumbo.
I can, yes. I'm sorry, hogwash hooey fooey, however much we
So then the concept of exploration that science has developed is the concept of multiverse. Anyone that's a Marvel fan will be familiar to a multiverse. It was a really nice way to sell more comic books about the same hero by putting them in new circumstances that were actually the same circumstances in a different setting that were actually the same. Because why not? People buy it if you slap Spider-Man on it. So,
the Torah, the Quran, and the Bible.
different holy books. But
Mm.
I'm not done answering your question about space and time, about spirit. So
I thought we were talking about
the
Spider-Man.
multiverse, the current leading development of multiverse is broken into two different thoughts. One is the Matrix, basically. We are in a computerized simulation, and everything that we're experiencing is actually just a computer programming, synthesizing it for our processing. So what does that make us? That is something that cannot be explained. It's also a theory that is being questioned because how do you prove that you're in a simulation? So is that science or is that a philosophy or a religion? Because it's based on personal belief without any actual testability. Because short of causing a shock to the system to short circuit it, how can you test if it was a simulation? The second concept of a multiverse is that the person, and I believe a good illustration of this is Men in Black at the end of the movie. At the end of the movie of Men in Black, you got a little alien hand with marbles, and each marble is its own galaxy/universe. So the question is, if we're in a multiverse and there's multiple universes that are parallel to each other, where do they all come from? Well, currently the developing idea is that with the super collider that's been created, that could theoretically generate miniature black holes. That through the creation of a miniature black hole, we can spontaneously create a universe from negative energy of a black hole. Has it been done? Nope. Has it been theorized? Sure. Men in Black were there before they had the super collider. So, science fiction becoming science? Well, it's science fiction first. How much evidence proves science true? So, the belief is maybe the creator of the universe isn't that much different than us. They just have a better technology curve. The question that still has to be asked is, where did they come from? Because then we still have the question of, if you're accepting that a intelligent being created this universe, who created the creators of this universe? Which gets into the where is God and where did God come from beforehand? At the end of the day, the question is, what evidence can a Christian produce that will justify to anyone of an analytical mind that God does exist before there was nothing? Yet science asks us to believe that God didn't create everything from nothing, being there before nothing, but I have to believe that there were natural laws before there was nothing that created something. Science is asking me to have the same faith that I already have, where I call it God, they call it natural laws, that they determine are true because I dropped this pen and it falls to the table. That's an observation. That's not explaining where gravity really came from. Because you can say space and time, but the question is, where does space and time come from? And even though we say something came from nothing, why is it, according to science, we're doing nothing? Would you agree with that?
Sure.
Oh, okay. So if all energy cannot be created nor destroyed,
According to Einstein, I don't really agree with that, but yes.
and there is positive energy,
Explain what you mean by
Protons.
positive.
there is
Okay.
a certain amount of protons in the universe,
Okay.
and there's an equal amount of electrons to balance the protons.
Not specifically. You can be imbalanced. Yes,
Well, if it's imbalanced, then it becomes a problem because it's an
Well,
unstable.
but an unstable element, which we do have all over the place.
Free
That's
radicals.
what creates an atom bomb, for instance.
Humans caused it.
Whoa.
Last time I checked, the atomic bomb was not found in nature. It was created in a laboratory.
Yes, but positive and negative
Humans
electrons.
introduce a destructive nature. Nature does not. Nature lives.
Nature is stable.
So why does it have
So,
to be a positive and a negative?
If there is a balance of positive energy in the universe, and there is a equal amount of negative energy in the universe, accounting calls that a zero sum. So does as parts of astrophysics, that there is a zero sum energy balance in the universe. Just because we can't find all the negative energy doesn't mean that it's not balancing out all the positive energy that we do find.
Well, it also doesn't mean that it just happens to be there. I mean, you got to show me some kind of proof to say that everything's balanced, because there's obviously many elements that aren't, and they're ready to become.
Yeah.
They all elements strive to be balanced, but just because they're striving to be balanced doesn't mean that the equilibrium is there.
But in your science exploration of yourself and your academics,
Mhm.
Einstein's accepted as solid.
Yeah, but just because he's accepted, he isn't accepted by me as solid.
But the scientific community accepts Einstein's principles.
Okay, that doesn't mean that they're right. As a matter of fact, most of this stuff's been proven wrong.
Well,
So
but they're
if-
not laws, right?
No, they're
Right.
theories.
Yeah.
It's all theories.
So that's
Because in science, we won't label it a law until we can prove it without a doubt.
right.
And last time I checked, there's not that many laws.
Correct.
There's a whole bunch of theories.
Exactly.
So I'm supposed to believe stuff that's not provable, but because we are not able to prove it, we build it into the scientific method that we will revise our hypothesis with more information
I can prove to you right now that Einstein was wrong.
in a way that I would understand.
Yes, easily understand.
What's that?
E equals mc squared.
What
Okay?
about it?
C squared. What is C squared? Do you know?
C squared.
Yeah, but what does it mean? What does it stand for?
No idea.
C is the speed of light, and squared is squared. If you know math.
Yep.
Okay. So that is what we know as a constant. Okay. Now a constant is a multiplier, which means that we can replace it with pretty much anything. Okay. It's going to be a scalable thing, but a constant is simply a constant, which means that when you look at the base of that formula, energy equals mass. Okay. So now we've discovered energy equals mass. How come a dead battery and a fully charged battery weigh the same amount?
That gets back to the
Exactly.
law. Well, it would be to the law of conservation of energy.
Yeah, but
Energy cannot be
energy
created
equals
nor
mass.
destroyed.
Right, but energy equals mass.
But
They don't
it's
weigh
the
the same.
They do.
But that's just because the battery's dead. Because to my understanding of how a battery works,
Mhm.
you have the negative and the positive flow. A battery depletes the positive flow and becomes
Negative.
All right.
a
so,
solid negative charge.
Okay, so now let me ask you another question.
But am I correct?
Yes, but I think there's a step that you're missing out when it comes to electricity.
But the bare basics of a battery is you can replenish a battery if you bring in more positive charge.
Right.
And that's how you charge a battery. So the positive ends up becoming a negative because of the closed system that we've created,
No, not really.
because it's depleted, because matter is not created nor destroyed.
No, not really. Okay, so let me ask you a question. You have wiring in the house. Okay, so you've got
Yes.
your source, you have a wire, and then you've got your light. Okay. Do particles travel along the wire?
Only
when it's on and moving?
when I complete the circuit and it flows one way.
Right, but my question is particles. Do particles move in said circuit?
Yeah.
According to
Yes.
No.
no, according to
Because
most,
there's no particle, there's
Then
no
how
physical piece
no.
of
Then
anything
how does
that-
fiber optics work?
Well,
now that this is lights, it's lights that transfer through, and those are waves. And just like electricity, these are waves. Electricity is waves
So-
traveling through.
so according to what I understand about matter, this table I'm sitting at is moving right now
Yes, always moving.
because the particles in it are always moving.
Correct.
So you're asking me if particles move when the circuit's not closed. I would say,
Okay, I mean,
See,
let me
you're-
rephrase.
Traveling.
Let me rephrase. Or does anything that is in the wire when it is not plugged in, all of a sudden move or leave or add to the wire when it is plugged in?
in theory, according to science, yes, because
Oh no.
all things are moving.
Well, so here's the thing, though, is that electricity travels in waves.
No, electricity is different because the completed circuit causes the electrons and
Yeah, but
Protons
is
to
there
move.
an electron that leaves the let's say the wall outlet and goes
No.
into the wire? And
now
it
you're
travels along the
changing it.
wire?
Now you're changing it.
You never said travel. You
No.
never said the particles travel.
Actually, what
That's what you're trying to ask.
he was
Yeah.
focusing on was particles
Yeah.
and not electrons.
Well,
Because electricity and particles are two different things because a wire is made up of particles to create the copper wire. However, the copper wiring is the conduit for the charge and transfer of electrons along the copper wire to provide electricity.
if we were moving electrons, then it would change the element that it is, and it does not change the element.
No, because water can share electrons. That's how we get bonds. It's through the bonds and the traveling and the sharing of these things that complete circles.
Right. So, but if
Of a
if
particle.
water adds electrons to it, then all of a sudden it's no longer hydrogen and oxygen. Now, oxygen with 3 covalent bonds becomes separate oxygen. I forget. Hydrogen becomes helium when you add electrons.
No, because hydrogen can't become helium because you're not adding neutrons and
Either
protons to the
oxygen or carbon
nucleus.
dioxide.
You're
The nucleus. No, we're not
No.
talking about the nucleus. We're talking
Oxygen.
about.
I can't create hydrogen into helium.
Mhm.
I'd be changing the particles.
Right, exactly.
This
My point.
is
Exactly
driving
my point.
Yeah,
the
we got
point
it.
that science can do circular logic and circular reasoning. And a changing of a word changes the concept because we've gone from particles to how electricity travels.
Right.
And science is similar to my economic background. Science has, I don't know, let's take a random quick look. How many disciplines of science?
Oh, you're gonna get into computer science.
So
nursing
we have
science.
3 main branches, according to Google. We have natural sciences, social sciences, formal science. So then if we talk about the sciences, what?
How can you trust Google that it's giving you accurate information?
I don't.
Faith.
But we know there, I mean, just going off the top of the head, we know there's astrophysics, there's physics, there's rocketry, there is engineering, there's aerospace, there is, so just right there, I'm naming 5 different ones. We have to piece it into different sections.
Medical
Engineering-
sciences.
Well,
Medical sciences, biosciences.
engineering can be broken down by the different types of engineering.
Mhm.
There's all 2 different skills.
So science has to break it down into a small box with well-defined walls and stay within that box. So again, sciences are driven to explain things that we can observe. Religion is an aspect of why are we here? It answers the question that science can't because religion and those aspects of looking at life, we're looking at the holistic system where science can only control certain variables. Economics are the same way. I can predict what will happen if the interest rates go up, but nothing else can change. The problem is that's not going to happen because unemployment will change when we change the interest rates. The number of houses being sold will go up or down based on which way the interest rates go. It is a causal effect that has dominoes that we cannot predict with accuracy what will happen, and our predictions are based on the history of prior events that represent what happened in the past. When interest rates go up, these are the things that typically happen. Doesn't always work. Science explains what we can, but as our local scientist in the room has already showed, if one scientist does not believe what the scientific community believes, is it still science? According to them, yes. According to us, sure, why not? Because our lights are still going on, electricity still travels, and who really needs to know that level of detail? Things to be considered. Science and Christianity can go with each other because they answer two different questions. And at the end of the day, a person who has an experience cannot be reasoned with. If you believe you have been to Mount Everest, who am I to argue with you? If someone says,
Photos or it didn't happen.
photos didn't happen, really.
Photos or it didn't happen. I want to see photos
Okay.
of you on Mount Everest.
So, Adobe Photoshop and
Ah,
AI, we have doctored images.
True.
We have doctored audio. We just came from a state where we had a principal of a high school was put on administrative leave for supposed remarks he made to staff about the community that came out that were doctored statements done by the gym teacher who did not actually have a degree in education, that was hired as a teacher from another state, who was fired for questionable conduct with students. But if it's not on the resume, who knows what to look for? Because we have to believe the piece of paper with the documents you have in front of you. Again, we say we want to see it to believe it. Reality is, if you're not personally experiencing it, can you believe it? Virtual reality is a reality now. So we can artificially create the belief that we're experiencing things that we've never experienced. So what is truth? What is reality? Is defined by the person. Christianity and divinity will pursue the idea that there is absolute truth. I don't disagree. There are absolute truths. But the problem is, they are what you've experienced. And we will seek out those most often that agree with us to reinforce our truth. It's the psychology principle of like will be attracted to like. It's done in nature. As we were talking about with atoms, there's the magic number of how many atoms on which track outside of the ring of the nebulous particle, atom, molecule, however you want to call it, because it comes in different forms, forming the bonds to make the number that it needs. We will attract to those that we agree with. And those we don't agree with, we won't agree with until you have an experience. I was thinking about the other day, Halley's Comet, back in 90s to early 2000s, a group believed aliens were in the tail of the comet. So they committed suicide at the perfect time because they had a belief that they would be teleported up into the alien spaceship. No one would be able to reason with those individuals, saying, if they could teleport you up, why did you have to die? If it was a physical spaceship, why couldn't they teleport their bodies?
Your spirits were being transported.
Into what? A spiritual vessel?
That was their thing.
But again, if it's real, why couldn't they teleport the real you?
It's not. They could argue that's not your real you. Your spirit is your real you. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, that guy was nuts. But yeah.
So, anyway, anything else from the peanut gallery?
I'm leaves ahead. We're going to discuss this later.
You didn't throw any peanuts at me, though.
Oh, I don't have any.
You came unprepared.
I was not prepared.
One comment.
What?
I'll ask God when I get to heaven where he came
Yeah,
from.
let us know.
I will.
There you go. You good?
I'm good.
Okay. Thanks for watching. Take care.
This is what I was trying to talk about. Free radicals.